Nano Machine by Hanjo Wiolia.
Chapter 388 Non-Aggresion Treaty Part 1.
2 days later, the announcement of the forces of justice spread all around Wulin. The disbanding of the Demon Justice Alliance in less than a year. Everyone in the Yulin knew that this wasn't an alliance which would last very long, but this seemed too quick. Even the forces of evil, which didn't know about the outside situation because of the recent internal affairs, were interested in it. The headquarters of the forces of evil, located in the northwest of Sichuan. In the headquarters, the room used by their leader was the largest. There, a large man with scars all over his body was being informed by a middle-aged man who was wearing an eye patch on his left eye. That is the current report on the status of Yulin. Call, this is going to be really fun. The big man seemed like this was an interesting turn of events. It was because this was too good of an opportunity to let go. Even if we just aim for the Nano festival, we will end up getting satisfying results. But we are going to miss out on the great opportunity of killing everyone, all thanks to that damn bastard. For the first time, the balance between the three largest factions in Wulin broke down. The Blade God's 6 Martial Clan was one of the triggers. Unfortunately, because of the internal conflicts, the forces of evil didn't have a chance to take this opportunity. If the master recovers his internal wounds, you can take them down at any time. The big man didn't respond to the words of the middle-aged man at all. It was because he had joined hands with this man for a better benefit, but it seemed like the future couldn't be guaranteed. Master. Right, this isn't strange or anything. This could be a very natural procedure. What was it again? The old waves of Yangtze River push the new waves ahead? I have been waiting for a long time for this moment to come. The old waves of Yangtze River push the new waves ahead to replace the old waves. Just as the back waves in the Yangtze River will push the new waves ahead, it is said that a man of the new generation will soon replace the era of an old man. This big man was proud at heart, but he never believed that he could be the top person forever. Leader. Don't say such things. Aren't you the great master Weststrong King? It has been a very long time since the middle-aged man worked for the master, but seeing the weak figure before him, he couldn't help but feel sorry. The true identity of the man, the one called Master, was none other than Hang Yen, one of the 5 strongest warriors, the Weststrong King. Who would have guessed that he, who had been in the forces of evil for 30 years, would receive treatment for internal injuries? If the information about his health had escaped this room, it would have caused a major change in the hierarchy of the forces of evil. There are tens of thousands of soldiers looking forward to Master's return. Shake off your injuries to get rid of that man as soon as possible. Please refrain yourself from speaking such weak things in front of your subordinates. You. I brought you because you used to be meek with your words, but look at your nagging now, Garmojum. The middle-aged man. His true identity was Garmojum, the leader of the 18 river families of the Yellow River. He was a top-skilled warrior in the forces of evil's alliance. He was also the uncle of the 3 Gar brothers, who died at the hands of Chen Yuan. You are being too much, Master. I am responsible for 3% of this alliance's funds. This is upsetting. Call. Those words, which were spoken out to make Hang Yen feel better, were taken as a light joke. That was how much they valued and trusted each other. Weststrong King, Hang Yen went back to the main point. After listening to your words, I feel like I need to show people that the Weststrong King is still alive and well. Master, you mean? I am talking about the Non-Aggresion Treaty, which will be made. A gleam could be seen in Garmojum's eyes. The king himself was injured, and although he was quiet when compared to before, it was a hard reality that the Weststrong King couldn't mobilize power because of the internal conflicts and civil war in his region. Master. How about we focus on treating your injuries first? No. If we don't make myself present in the festival, the people of Wulin and that guy will notice something is wrong. Ah. Something he never thought of before. Certainly, as Hang Yen spoke, that guy might be paying close attention to this festival as well. If the West Strong King didn't send people to the Non-Aggression Treaty by trying to focus on internal power, there was a high probability that that guy would attack again. It is our luck that every time the treaty got renewed, the master had never gone there in person. Hang Yen was someone who never attended the treaty because of his extreme pride. Not once did he even consider visiting neither the demonic cult nor the imperial palace. But even if he didn't attend, if he didn't send a plausible and sensible person, that guy was bound to notice. Gar Mojum. Make sure to attend it. Sorry? Gar Mojum was perplexed at the unexpected command from Hang Yen. Master. Under the current circumstances, if I leave doesn't matter. This place is guarded by the most skilled swordsman. Currently, the Master of Forces of Evil is being guarded by Gar Mojum, the second in rank Gong Yun and the fifth ranked member of the Forces of Evil, Jiam Jongsa. Although those three were guarding him, if one of them went missing, the safety of the injured Hang Yen might get compromised. Hang Yen smiled bitterly at Gar Mojum, who seemed worried. I am not going to just send you away. Then? Those bastards of the demonic cult killed my nephews. It was a fact that was found out after hurting the head of the Osang family. In the beginning, he didn't hear anything from him, but after killing half of his family, he finally decided to speak up. We have some debts to pay. He spoke calmly, but his eyes held rage. Gar Mojum, who wasn't married, never let anyone who touched his family or friends lead a happy life. It was just that, because of the civil war, his chance of getting revenge had been delayed. Give me the chance to pay off the debt. When the treaty is done, confusion is sure to arise. And when the confusion starts, we'll get to know if the forces of justice will be the first target or not, right? Due to the announcement of the Forces of Justice Alliance breaking news, the other incidents about the Forces of Justice were being dug out and the matter about the Imperial Palace had spread out too. Just combining the information they gathered, it was obvious who of the two factions would get targeted. Even if they decided to break ties, the demonic cult will be the first to move. That son of Chen Yuzhong is running wild these days. Someone has to teach him that people can't run rampant in Wulin just because they're ignorant. Thud. Hang Yan looked at the chest, which was covered in scars. The wounds he had suffered from the former lord of the demonic cult, Chen Yuzhong. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't help but retreat when he was facing the former lord of the demonic cult. I will repay you for the disgrace I had to face with the life of your child's. Gu. Even though he was injured, the energy Hang Yan was releasing would make anyone think that he was in good health. Understood. I will make sure to fulfill my master's orders and return. As Hang Yan ordered, he had to leave in a hurry to attend the treaty. It took 8 days to get to the Tongo region. When Gar Mojum went to greet the master, before he left, Hang Yan asked something he was curious about. By the way, when they decided to break the alliance this time, what was the lord of the demonic cult called? He was called the Changing Demon because he broke down the trust of the alliance by cutting the arms off of the 3 leaders of the forces of justice who went to the Emperor as their envoys. Changing Demon? It is so like the Yulin to give out such names. Except for those of their own faction, they would always give the worst kind of titles to the warriors of other factions. No matter how mad they were, to call the lord of the demonic cult as a changing demon was like trying to belittle him. But the warriors of Wulin don't call him that. They use a very broad title for him. Broad? Even the emperor, the great emperor of the empire, said that he could never call the lord of the demonic cult with such a reckless and belittling name, so he called the lord of demonic cult the demon emperor. Emperor? Huh. Hang Yan's eyebrows rose. Even though he himself, a member of the 5 strongest warriors, only got to call himself king, this title for the lord of the demonic cult made him furious. And, ever since the Non-Aggression Treaty was signed, not a single person from the Wulin dared to threaten the imperial palace directly either. Make sure that he never gets called with that name ever again. Gar Mojam from Yellow River. I obey the command of the master. 4 days before the Non-Aggression Treaty, the imperial palace envoys arrived at the main hall of the Forces of Justice. In the main hall, 8 leaders of the Forces of Justice and the envoy from the imperial palace were bowing their heads to greet each other. The person who was from the imperial palace to deliver the news was Yangzhou, the northern commander. Standing in front of the first seat, Yangzhou opened a scroll which had a name on it and proceeded to recite its contents. The location will be held in the Jin Castle in Tongo, as it is a peaceful place for both the Wulin and the imperial family to attend. The number of escorts apart from the heads of each faction shouldn't exceed 100, and during the ceremony, as they read the contents, the leader's expression turned strange. All the 3 largest factions would probably feel the same way about the treaty. The moment the treaty comes to an end, war will start. So, once the meeting came to an end, the leaders tried to prepare for an emergency situation and mobilized the elite warriors from North Justice Blades, the best armed groups in the entirety of Yulin. But, with the content of the Emperor's message, their plan was blocked. Only one group can be sent. Of course, that didn't mean that it was the only way. Representatives of each faction could enter without any restrictions. For example, if the representative of a 3rd clan from Yulin was present there, they might have an edge over the other factions in terms of power. And such a thing would only happen for the Forces of Justice because it was formed by various clans. I know very well who came up with those thoughts. Hoo. A smile crept across the lips of 3rd leader Nam Gunkyang, who was bowing his head. The current lord of the demonic cult, Chun Yoan, was still residing in the imperial palace. Even so, when the alliance gets broken up, the lord of the demonic cult was in the middle of the Yulin's realm. There were already people of the North Justice Blade of Yanbuso around the palace. Whenever the lord of demonic cult came out, they would be ready to hit him. This is no use. Lord of the demonic cult, no matter what you do to move His Majesty, you will not be able to come out of Tongo alive. There were more than 100 small and medium-sized factions which had the same thoughts as the extremists. Moreover, in case of any emergency, they had already hidden their men everywhere in Tongo, which meant that, in case of an emergency, the Yulin had enough warriors on their side. On the other hand, the Lord of the Demonic Cult's troops are stranded south of Yellow River. Before announcing the break in the alliance, the 7 clans of Yulin and 6 clans from the Hubei region, as well as the disciples of clans which were at the borders of the Yellow River, were prepared to block the forces of the demonic cult who would try to advance to the north of the festival. Even if the members of the demonic cult wanted to use other methods, they wouldn't find any way out. This is quite clever. As if that wasn't enough, the Blade God's 6 martial clan and the forces of evil were keeping an eye on their borders to block the movement of the demonic cult's members too. This was done without any agreement with each other. Even they know that this is a great opportunity. There was only one mistake you made, Lord of the demonic cult, and that was to create a sense of crisis for everyone. And with their members being blocked off at the borders, the lord of the demonic cult, Chun Yoan, could only mobilize about 50 members who were currently residing in the imperial palace. And this was great news to others. A perfect chance to kill Chun Yoan, the worst kind of enemy, who reached divine master level. This is the perfect time to reach our goal. A member of the extremists had managed to complete the extreme martial body. But due to the lack of time, their technique wasn't tested on many people, but it was said that it had great effect on the successfully completed 80 members. Demon Emperor? Don't joke with me. Evil never crosses the sky. For the sake of the clear blue sky, Tonga will be your grave. Nam Gung Kyong's eyes flashed as they looked at the floor. Starting from the festival, the situation of Wulin would change completely. Time flew by quickly. The long-awaited festival had arrived. Dano, the great day, which fell on the 5th lunar month, was known to be auspicious. The Dano festival, the day when the yang is most prosperous in the year, the festival originated the reign of King Hui of the Chu dynasty and spread all over. Jin Castle was located in the heart of Tongo. Tongo was the first capital where Zhu Wenmaiyang, the first emperor, had initially resided, and it is a place where he made an oath to the gods of heaven and earth to save the people of his kingdom. In commemoration of that, the Non-Aggresion Treaty between the imperial family and the people of Wulin was being held in Tongo. It wasn't a very big castle, because it was a small region, but it was enough to accommodate 20,000 people. Before the treaty ceremony started at noon, officials of the imperial palace, 200 guards, and 3,000 soldiers were lined up in 5 rows. Thud. 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 The guards of the imperial palace, who were guarding the castle gates, were beating the drums as they shouted. The leaders of Yulin and the heads of each faction have arrived. The first to arrive were the Yulin clan. It was natural since this place came under their realm. Thud. The first person to step through the entrance of the castle gate was the great leader of the forces of justice. Emok took a deep breath while examining the castle and the decorations which were put up for the ceremony. Finally, is it going to start? Starting today, new changes are going to occur. 5 leaders, leading the 243 warriors of each clan, the heads of multiple small factions, and 100 elite warriors of the North Justice Blade, who came back from the Imperial Palace in defeat, entered the palace with determination. Chapter 389. Non-Aggresion Treaty. Part 2. You can go this way. The first to enter the Jin Castle of the Wulin people were the heads of each clan of Yulin, who moved to the opposite side of the Imperial Palace's guards under the guidance of the Imperial Guards. The people of Yulin who were assigned a place close to the western gate got into a formation right away. It showed how orderly and disciplined their faction was. Among those, there were those who couldn't hide their energy, the elite warriors of North Justice Blade. It was worthwhile to bring in 100 of the North Justice Blade. The third leader, Nam Gung couldn't hide his satisfaction while looking at the warriors. The leader of North Justice Blade, one of the best forces of Yulin, was under Yun Buso, the eldest son of Emok. The warriors of North Justice Blade seemed to be in anger when they learned that Yun Buso had been captured by the lord of the demonic cult, Chen Yuan, in the Imperial Palace. The air seemed to have turned cold, perhaps because they wanted blood to flow. Lord of the demonic cult. You have a talent for making enemies. The North Justice Blade is made up of only those who are extremely skilled. For the extremists to have this power on their side was something that could instill confidence in them, and with 100 North Justice Blade warriors, they could destroy 2 to 3 demonic cults in one night. Furthermore, did you pressure the 300 guards and eunuchs? Would you be able to do that again this time? The people who attended this time were all masters. There was Emok, the supreme master, and the 5 leaders who were all superior masters, including Nam Gung. Moreover, from the small and medium clans, there were more than 50 super master level warriors. They were fully prepared to face the Divine Master. This will be the same for the forces of evil and the Blade God's 6 martial clan too. They will bring their best power to kill Chen Yuan too. If the 3 forces attacked at once, it was determined that, no matter how strong Chen Yuan was, he wasn't invincible. The main point comes after dealing with the Lord. After dealing with a common enemy, the demonic cult, all the other 3 factions will end their alliance immediately. And the factions which survive in that position will turn into a major faction in the Yulin. At that specific moment, he looked up at the sky. The sun was heading towards the middle of the sky and noon was approaching. At the western gate of Jin Castle, the sound of drums echoed around. Thud. 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 The leaders of the forces of evil and their clan heads are entering. The second to arrive were the forces of evil. The eyes of Peng Chengwen, a long-time member of the forces of justice, widened. I heard there was a civil war happening, yet they are attending? Even within the Wulin, there were spies placed in each faction. It was done by the forces of justice, who knew that the forces of evil were complicated to deal with. Naturally, they thought that no one would be dispatched to the treaty. Gar Mojum from the Yellow River. No way. Why is he here? A middle-aged man with a black eye patch entered through the gate. He was the head of the 18 river families and also a tyrant, someone very close to the forces of evil. And there were 17 men, who seemed like leaders, who came after him. That one is Ba Ko-sun. Jigul Yongun, the 13th leader of the forces of justice, who was the head of intelligence, immediately noticed that one person. The river families, Ba Ko-sun. It was said that Chen Yuan had drowned them all in the river with his own hands. Where are they? As soon as Gar Mojum entered the castle, he looked for the demonic cult. One of the facts he found out about them was that the demonic cult were looking for the base of the Blue Sky Brotherhood. As a result, it was Gar Mojum who was convinced that the true culprit wasn't the Blue Sky Brotherhood but the demonic cult who disappeared overnight. Today, he was going to make sure to let the blood of demonic cult flow for the sake of his nephews, and the Blue Sky Brotherhood's men who died. I will never forgive those demonic bastards. Who the real culprit is was still unknown, but he hoped to find someone called Yang Danhua among the demonic cult's members. He only heard this name once when he hypnotized someone. A young man with a pure white face, named Chen Yuan, the head of the demonic cult. They must have come from the 10,000 mountains seeing Yang Danhua there, but also witnessing the Lord treat him so politely. He seemed like a high-ranked member of the cult. It was said that Yang Danhua had beheaded a person on the command of Chen Yuan. If he came to the treaty, Gar Mojum was sure to pay back twice the number. He was planning to find out every single member of the cult and decapitate them. Thud. 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 Gar Mojum and the river families, as well as hundreds of warriors below them, were about to get into formation under the guidance of the Imperial Guards, when suddenly the drums began to echo from the east. Is it them? Have they arrived? The gazes of both, the forces of evil and the forces of justice, went towards the eastern gate at the same time. Among the three largest factions, the only one remaining was the demonic cult. The one who entered was someone other than the one they wanted, the new power and the leading faction, Blade God 6 Martial Clan. The three leaders of the Blade God 6 Martial Clan are entering. At the shout of the guard, the eyes of all the leaders turned sharp. It would be their first time seeing these people. Through their hands, the sub-clans of the forces of justice were completely destroyed. 3 leaders? The Yulin thought that as they were made of 6 clans, there would be 6 leaders controlling numerous clans, but only half of them seemed to have come. But the fact that only half of them are here meant a lot. It meant that they were aiming for peace through this treaty. They are coming. Everyone's attention was focused on the spot where they would confront these leaders for the first time. They saw 3 people walking side by side at the eastern gate. On the left side was an old man with short white hair and red scabbard, and the one in middle was with long hair, and a black cloth covering his eyes. And on the right side was another middle-aged man with a beard and well-developed muscles, without wearing a top. What was unusual about him was the fact that he was wearing a huge sword that was of the same height as him on his back. They are unusual, great leader. Emok didn't respond to the 6th leader Peng Chengwen's words, who was puzzled. However, he had a serious expression on his face. Great leader, what should we do? Elder Peng. Maybe everyone here today will risk their lives. All 3 of them are supreme masters. Besides, One of them is powerful enough to compete with a great leader like me too. Peng Chengwen couldn't help but be shocked at the words of Imok. He couldn't estimate the exact level of them. He knew that they would be better than him, but he never imagined that they would be so dangerous. Ugh, what does that mean? Great leader, does this mean all three of them are capable enough to be on the same level as the 5 strongest warriors? At that question, Imok looked at the man in the middle who covered his eyes in a black cloth. The 2 men on either side of him seemed to have reached the entry stage of Supreme Master level, but the man who covered his eyes with the black cloth looked to be on the same level as Imok. The 5 strongest warriors had different abilities, but when the standard is taken in a general term, then this blindfolded man can be called one of them. This gasp escaped from Nam Gunkyang's mouth. In fact, it was a voice closer to embarrassment. There were 12 other masters, with unusual energy flows, who followed behind the 3 main leaders, and to his surprise, all of them were superior master level. Besides that, the 100 warriors behind them were all close to the initial stage of super master level. It looked like they brought in all of their elite warriors. It makes no sense to have that much power with them. Everyone thought that other factions would come fully prepared. However, this was far beyond the expected range. The first goal of Nam Gunkyang was to get rid of the common enemy, the demonic cult's Lord Chen Yuan, and then aim for the Blade God 6 martial clan, but never did he think that he would have to revise the plan. Lord of the demonic cult, with him, these ones should be taken down first. It was Nam Gunkyang's attempt to conserve his power and use it when it was needed the most. If he went according to the first plan and removed the Lord of Demonic Cult with the help of Blade God 6 martial clan, then Yulin forces would have a hard time taking down Blade God 6 martial clan all by themselves. The number of super masters and superior masters the Blade God 6 martial clan possessed was overwhelming. It looks like they are shocked. Hee hee. The muscular man without the shirt smiled when he looked at the stiff faces of the Yulin forces. That was when the white-haired man on the left spoke softly after clicking his tongue. TCH, why do you care what their reactions are like? They are gonna die anyway. Crazy Sword Master, Cha Yun Kong. The man wearing a sword that was his height was one of the top 3 of the 6 martial masters of the clan, Crazy Sword Master Cha Yun Kong. Among the top 3 martial masters, he was the only one who competed in the extreme art of Blade God. Why are you being so stern with me now, Fire Sword Master, no Du Kyung? You are too old to know the joy of being in the spotlight. The white-haired old man, who had a red sword on him, was the Fire Sword Master, one of the 6 martial masters of the clan. Among the 6 martials, he had been the only person to hold the title of Sword Master for the longest time. Ignoring their chatter, the blindfolded man in the middle spoke to the white-haired one. I expect that everything is well prepared. Yes, Sword Master Li Wook. Once the Sword Master sends a signal, not a single person inside these walls will be able to survive. The person who covered his eyes with the black cloth was one of the 6 martial masters, Sword Master Li Wook. He was the older brother of Li Bek, who died through the hands of Chen Yuan. Ever since that incident, Sword Master Li Wook had been in a bad mood, at which Du Kwang shook his head and spoke. We are soon going to use the rage-roaring thunder, Sword Master Li Wook. Wouldn't everything be solved once the Lord of the Demonic Cult gets removed from this world? Do you not believe in the technique that will be used? Rage-roaring thunder. A bomb made by an explosives expert 100 years ago. It was the worst weapon with an explosion radius equivalent to 5 times the normal blast made by energy. Since the materials needed for the bomb were difficult to obtain, manufacturing it turned hard. Even the Blade God 6 martial clan only had a few, and they were all laid out in the underground of this castle. Even if they are used, it is natural for us to prepare for any mishaps. Even if we remove everyone in here, including that Lord of the Demonic Cult, we would only be taking one small step to our goal. I don't have time to listen to this. Fine. The blindfolded man was already crazy before, but after losing his brother, he turned even colder and much more obsessed. After all, the person in charge of this task was Sword Master Li Wook. Following the orders of the Great Master, they decided to follow and help him. Even the others of the 6 martial masters highly praised him for his thoroughness. As long as this man is here, no one will survive. You, Lord of the demonic cult, have interfered with our plans enough times. You will be brought to justice here. In that way, the 3 factions of Wulin had gathered: the Yulin, the forces of evil, and the Blade God's 6 martial clan. The only one that was left was the demonic cult. It would be difficult to come to the castle as their path was being blocked. Noon, when the sun was high in the sky. Yet, not a sign of demonic cult. Naturally, the leaders of each faction had no choice but to be puzzled. What is this? Why are they so late? Are they going to abandon their pride and hide in the imperial palace? It was what everyone was thinking. But then... thud. 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 At that moment, the drumming sound came from the southern gate of the castle, along with the shouts of the Imperial Guard above the wall. The Lord of the demonic cult is entering. Finally, they are here. Wuong. All 3 factions, which had gathered inside, looked at the southern gate. The cult was the only faction they had targeted, and it finally appeared. The guards hadn't informed about any other leaders or cultists coming along, since they were all blocked near the Yellow River. As soon as the Lord of the demonic cult steps foot into the castle, the war will begin. Yes. At Sword Master Li Wook's telepathic order, Master Egam, who assisted him, nodded and answered. Shockingly, the moment they were aiming for wasn't the end of the treaty, like how it was for the forces of evil and forces of justice. The moment of the beginning of the treaty was known to be the most auspicious moment of all. But that didn't matter to them, let it be royals or warriors. After all, the Blade God's 6 martial clan had decided to kill everyone to keep this matter shut. Thud. 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 Some heavy footsteps could be heard from the gate. Everyone looked at the situation curiously, but a few members of the demonic cult came in from the northern gate with 4 to 5 large wooden boxes and brought them into the castle grounds. It looked strange as the members of the cult were covered in dirt, like they had been rolling in the ground for quite some time. What is that? What did they bring? As if coming late wasn't enough, they came in with wooden boxes. Even the top 3 masters of the Blade God's 6 martial clan were looking at the boxes. When the wooden boxes reached the center, where the officials and the guards were present, the members of the demonic cult came to a sudden halt. What? How big is he? In the midst of the warriors of the cult, there was a muscular man, twice the size of a normal male adult. Who could ever be that tall? At that moment, the large man kicked the wooden box with his foot. Bang! Creak! The large box fell, and with the sound of metal pieces colliding, something fell out. It was something which was round and twice the size of human fists, and it seemed to have a wick on top of it. Whoa! What is that? An iron ball? Everyone seemed puzzled with it. It was their first time seeing such an item, but there were those whose expressions went stiff. The masters of the Blade God's 6 martial clan. They couldn't hide the shock as their mouths opened wide seeing the iron balls, which came out of the wooden box. Nonsense! How did they? The identity of the iron ball that came out of the wooden boxes was none other than the rage-roaring thunder bombs, which they had planted in the underground of the Jin castle. What the hell? Even Li Wook was shocked. The large man knelt down on one knee and looked at a member who was standing in the middle of the imperial officials, and shouted in a large voice. Hack! Sorry for being late. Since there were so many, we had to dismantle them and remove every last one of them, Lord. What? Lord? Everyone looked at the man, who looked like an official of the palace with shock in their eyes, as the large man spoke unexpected words.